What's up? What's up? Back in front of the mirror wall. But I'd moved the camera a little bit. I'm actually gonna just move a little bit more. My cat was coming up and down the stairs, so I thought different angle, more different, not just visual static, same shot every time. And also maybe we get a cat cameo in the corner, which I love, so I'm sure everyone else does too. Hi, hello. I literally 60 seconds ago finished shooting the previous video that was a review of Lives of the Monster Dogs by Kirsten Backus. I literally just got up to go and blow my nose, and now I'm back. It is 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to see if I can burn through this in even less time than I spent on Monster Dogs, which seems very possible. But here we are. William Gibson, Pattern Recognition. William Gibson is best known, of course, for Neuromancer, a book that he published in 1984 and sort of became the Bible, the basic text of cyberpunk. And it is one of the most famous and beloved, constantly in print classics of 20th century science fiction, and I have never read it. I have owned a copy of it since probably 2007, and I still have that same copy that I've had for over 15 years, and I have still never read it. Now I feel like maybe I might actually do it because I burned through this book in about a week, mostly reading it at my new job where I work part-time at a liquor store, and I read it on my phone primarily, but I did the first 50 pages got me in, read through a bunch of it on the phone. Once I got to close to the end, I did burn through the conclusion to this yesterday or the day before, in analog form. So William Gibson is a guy who's known for writing trilogies. Neuromancer was the first part of a trilogy, and this is the first part of a trilogy, the Blue Ant trilogy, because they all center around this tech company called Blue Ant that's run by a guy with perhaps the most Thomas Pynchon character name outside of a Thomas Pynchon book, Hubertus Big End. Motherfucker's name is Hubertus Big End, and then William Gibson has the absolute audacity to make him charming and attractive. Hubertus Big End. The only sort of negative that we get about him is that his mouth has an unnaturally high-seeming number of teeth, which always made, when I heard that image was evoked, I kept thinking about that episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog. Let's see if I can find the image here. But there's the guy who's always smiling. Anyways, this is the first part of a trilogy. Why did I read this book? How did this happen? I think that's an important part. This is going to be a somewhat more personal review, because ultimately this is just sort of a techno-noir. I don't have that much to say about the book itself, I feel like. Other than that, I liked it quite a bit, and I would suggest that if this is the sort of thing that you're into, you would probably like it too. But I am working on something, which is, I always feel very self-conscious and like a need to be ambiguous about what I'm doing. Even when I come down here into this basement to work on stuff, and I will say to my partner, I'll be like, I'm gonna go work in the basement, which could literally be like, I'm editing a video, I'm making music, I'm writing, I'm applying to jobs, like whatever. I'm always just kind of ambiguous about it, but it's, I find that there's something embarrassing about making art. Not like as a lifestyle or in like a sort of philosophical way. I mean like literally like being caught in the act of writing something. It to me, it's always been a solitary thing. It's a very sort of, it's just me alone, and as soon as I start letting people in, I get like weirdly self-conscious about it. But all of that is preamble to say that there's this story that the seeds of which has been kicking around in my head for about 10 years. And I've had all these sort of pieces going back 10 years that I didn't quite know what to do with. And there have been a number of attempts to start this, preceding even the book I actually did write to completion. And all of them were sort of aborted because I just kind of didn't know what the point was. I just didn't quite have, and I didn't quite have all the pieces yet. But then, go back about, let's say maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago-ish, I think things started to kind of click into place a bit more. And I started about a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago, to kind of more seriously start doing what I like to think of as pre-pro on this story, which is a book. I'm just gonna say it. I keep on saying that, oh, I'm writing this thing or I'm working on this story. It's a book. It's a novel. Okay, thank you. I started doing pre-pro on this novel. I had all of these sort of different ideas that I wasn't quite sure how they were all going to fit together. And I knew it was going to be some sort of like a mystery, maybe a noir. I don't know if I would go that far, but it's a mystery of a kind. It is about a character who discovers something that they don't understand, and then they go on a quest to understand it, and what they end up understanding is themselves, of course. But so I started doing a lot of thinking. I had all these different sort of topics that I was interested in, and I was doing a lot of research on, trying to figure out, like, ultimately, it's like I have these sort of topics and things that interest me, and I'll have this sort of like pull, this sort of heartstring pull that it's like, is this part of the story? And when I have that sort of impulse, I have to kind of explore it, go down the path, and a lot of the times it will kind of dead end fairly quickly, but then other times it will just open into this cavernous world that was there, hiding beneath the surface, and connects to the the motion light on the side of the house just turned on. I'm not a fan of that. Get out of my driveway. It's probably squirrels or something, but also my car is there, so don't fuck with my car. Sorry. Anyways, what was I even saying? Right. It's these connections that it's like some sort of extrasensory thing for me. I don't know how else to explain it. So I was doing a lot of that for last winter and spring. And then I kind of put it down for a while. I was working on some other stuff too, but also just kind of not being creative because I was kind of depressed all summer. But now it's kind of been amping up again, and I had gotten like a serviceable first draft of a first chapter, basically. And I did a lot of stuff where I was actually plotting stuff out, though I never stick to it, of course. If you plot out a summary of a whole book and then you write it, you're a fucking crazy person, okay? I'm just gonna say that up front. But just to kind of help me wrap my brain around how all the pieces of the puzzle were gonna kind of at least maybe fit together, I was also doing stuff like I was like listening to like ambient music with the lights off and just being like, I'm just gonna think about this story for 60 minutes, like just without thinking about anything else. I'm just gonna focus on thinking about the story, and that got me once that started happening, I was like, you know what I really want to do, because there's all these sort of themes and tropes in this story I'm writing, that are things that I really like a lot. So there's a lot of things that I like that are similar to it. Mysteries, noirs, things about like people getting kind of falling into rabbit holes, internet mysteries, um, found objects, unexplained things, and dark parts of the internet, the sort of dissemination of media in non-conventional ways. There's all these different sort of things that are part of this, that I was like, you know what I want to do? I started making a list. I made a playlist on Spotify, of just a bunch of music that I felt like had the sort of vibe I was going for. Then I started writing down sort of like, what are the themes, the vibes that I want to follow really hard? What are things that have the same vibe that I can look to for sort of like a compass needle? And then I started making a list of all of the sort of like movies and books that I've liked a lot, that have the same sort of format of story. And so, like, I famously like David Lynch a lot. And David Lynch is kind of like the king of this sort of strange modern noir that I want, even though the story that I'm writing is not particularly a lot like David Lynch. But if you think about like Blue Velvet, you've got your unassuming protagonist in this idyllic suburban setting. He finds this severed ear. It opens this door to him. He needs to know more, and it's a door that he walks through into this other world that exists inside of the world that he is in and always has, but he has never known it to be there. And once he has crossed that threshold, he is compelled to continue, and it just tumbles from there. Mulholland Drive, functionally the same idea. And that's the sort of story that I want. And there are a lot of stories like that. There are ones that are homages to David Lynch, something like Under the Silver Lake, by David Robert Mitchell, which is a movie that I really, really like a lot, even though a lot of people don't. And I recognize that it's kind of like David Lynch worship a little bit, but I think it works really well, and it does kind of differentiate itself enough from him. But one thing that I thought of that is a story that is very similar to this story, but I didn't even think about how it was similar to this story until after I had already started working on it, was the novel Universal Harvester by John Darnielle, the leader of the band The Mountain Goats, which is a book about a guy who's working at a video store in like the late 80s in Iowa, and someone returns a videotape and is like, someone taped over the movie. It's weird. You should look at it. And it's like handheld camcorder footage that's very strange and kind of creepy and mysterious. And then he becomes obsessed with trying to figure out who did this and what it is and why they did it and what it means. And he kind of falls down this rabbit hole. Now, the thing that the parallels there are that my story also, the inciting incident is videotape. Not the same setup, but it is videotape still. The other thing is that I think that, and I'm going to tell on myself a little bit, I'm not 100% sure what the end of the story is going to be. I have a good idea, but I'm definitely open to it changing. But the thing I love about that John Darnielle book is that it feels very scary. It feels very sinister. It feels like this mystery is about something really terrible, some sort of unspeakable, terrible, horrible thing that when you find out what it is, mild spoiler, it's not. It's mostly just sad. And that's kind of beautiful, because I feel like that's what life is really like. That's what real world mysteries kind of really are most of the time. They're interesting, but they're just kind of sad. People keep secrets for a reason. And so I've been watching a bunch of movies, rewatching a bunch of movies. I want to reread Universal Harvester. I've been rereading other things that I liked a lot to try and kind of cull some inspiration. But anyways, that long-ass tangent is just to say that a couple weeks ago, was coming home from therapy. I went to the bookstore and I was like, I want to get a book. I want to get a new book that I haven't read, even though I've got a literal whole ass bookshelf of books that I have not read. Literally 2/3 of the books I own I have not read, because most of the books that I read I get rid of after I read them. But I was like, I'm going to buy a new book. I don't know what it's going to be, but I want to find something to read. And I was at the bookstore for like an hour. Eventually I was like sitting in a chair like Googling shit. And I was like going through uh like my Goodreads TBR thing on there, and like looking for books on the shelf and blah 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 blah. And then I think it was like I was looking at Neuromancer, and then I clicked on William Gibson and I saw this book, and I was like, what's that book about? And so let me read the Dust Jacket synopsis to you. Case Pollard is an expensive, spookily intuitive American design consultant with an international reputation who is in London to evaluate the redesign of a famous corporate logo. She's offered a very different assignment, though. Find the creator of the haunting, enigmatic video clips being uploaded to the internet by a party or parties unknown. Followers of this footage, and Case herself is one, are generating massive underground buzz worldwide, and her new employer values buzz infinitely more than money. But with her London apartment burgled, her email hacked, and the records of her Manhattan therapist stolen, she begins to suspect that more is at stake here to someone than she could have ever imagined. Still, Case is her father's daughter. Win Pollard, Cold War security guru, was never a man to be deterred by the unimaginable. But the Cold War is over, and Win is missing, presumed dead, somewhere in Manhattan on the morning of September 11th, 2001. Case is soon phase shifting through parallel universes of marketing, globalization, and terror, heading always for the still point where the three converge. From London to Tokyo to Moscow, and finally into the eerie aftermath of a Soviet eco-disaster. She follows the implications of a secret as disturbing and compelling as the 21st century promises to be, a secret that may ultimately belong to her alone. What if it's like, now that I've read the book and I read that synopsis, very interesting, giving a lot of time to things in this synopsis that don't actually have a lot of screen time in the actual book itself, just being little hooks there, pull you in. Interesting. Also giving things away, though maybe not super obviously in that synopsis. I read that synopsis and I went, holy fucking shit, dude. That's exactly what I'm looking for. This is literally exactly what I'm looking for. Unassuming narrator gets dragged into this mystery about some sort of media that is being distributed or discovered in some sort of unusual way, that has some sort of unknown creator that they want to find the identity of. That is the sort of inciting incident of the story I'm working on. So I said, yeah, dog. I went over there. There it was. There were 2 copies of it even. Yeah, dog. Bought it. Went home. Actually, did I go home and read it? I can't remember. I did, yeah. I do. Man, why do I even remember this? I was listening to Dear God, I Hate Myself by Shoo Shoo in the car on the way home. I can't remember what I fucking ate for lunch yesterday, and I remember that. But I got sucked into this book pretty quickly. And I'll say this about it. The story, the plot, good. The mystery, pretty good. It felt like, she's investigating these clips. They call it the footage. It's these short clips of film that are appearing online. No one knows where they're from. No one knows if they're parts of a whole or if it's a work in progress. There's all these theories about who's making it and why they're making it and what it means. And it's created this cult following on the internet. There's these message boards where people are, theorizing and arguing about what it all means. It's really fascinating too. Part of why I was interested. This book's from 2003, and like there was some stuff like that existed at this point, but like the idea, like the rise of like ARGs and things like Pets Cop, these sort of like long form multimedia creepypasta type of internet storytelling, didn't exist that much really yet in 2003. So this book like was very on the nose, very accurate about that being a thing. Obviously, though, this book takes place sort of contemporaneously to when it was written. It People describe it as feeling sci-fi, but it's not at all. There's nothing science fictional about it, except for maybe the capabilities of some of the technology of some of the things in it. It's a little far-fetched, but not so far-fetched that it's truly science fiction. But the problem I have with the mystery and the plotting of the book is that like there aren't enough like dots along the path, right? There aren't enough sort of chapters or sections of this begets this, which I think is like for me, the most interesting thing about mysteries. And I'm always fascinated about trying to mirror the experience of like finding out about a thing online and then sort of getting sucked in to the rabbit hole, and how it's almost like this beautiful sort of like blooming paper orchid that just keeps growing and growing and growing, and that's what I want to capture in my book. And I don't think he really quite gets there with this. It's really like pretty simple. Like, she gets given a task, she's got a connection who's like, hey, I've got a tip for you, go here and see what you can find. She goes there, finds what she finds, then is like, with this, I've got this other guy I could probably take this to. She does, and he's like, here you go. And then she basically finds the answer. Like, there's obviously minutia in between, but that's functionally like the whole plot of the book. It's like 3 steps from beginning to end to solve the mystery, which is a little underwhelming, especially because this book's not even that. Oh, I didn't see her on the camera, but she did come down. Jojo. Oh, look at this beautiful girl. Look at this beautiful little girl. Oh, she's so perfect. Oh, she's such a perfect little girl. Okay, she wants to get down. Don't claw me. Okay. The book's like 350 pages long in hardcover, so probably longer in paperback. And like, it's not a short book. It's not a long book, but it's not a short book. And I was just like, man, for how long this book is, I feel like more shit could have happened in it. But whatever. Also, I would say that like the ending of the book does the sort of, it does this thing that's like, it's not exactly like, oh, the real trip was the friends we made along the way or whatever, but it's like kind of that a little bit, but not really. And I knew it was gonna be. They set up this whole thing at the beginning of the book that's like her dad disappeared on 9/11. He was in New York, but no one knows why. They never found his body. There's no like record of what he was doing there. They can't figure it out. No one knows if he's alive or dead. There's this huge red tape thing with insurance and all this stuff. And like her mom has gotten into like spiritualism and like EVPs and trying to contact the dead and stuff. And she's like, I don't want to have anything to fucking do with this. And I kind of immediately was like, okay, so the mystery is basically like she's distracting herself from the fact that her dad died. And what she's going to find at the end is probably not going to satisfy her in terms of like, or even necessarily me, in terms of like who is doing this and why, but what she's going to find is closure about her dead dad. And I was right. And like, I don't know, it's like sometimes you're like, yeah, it's obvious that that's what you should do in the story, but then sometimes it's like, well, if you didn't do that because it was obvious, then it would probably not work. So it's like, what's, it's a give and take, I guess. Um, but the book on a sentence level, very well written. William Gibson, clearly a very very smart guy. Interesting style of writing a lot of the time. A bit pretentious for sci-fi, and in a way that's unusual. Very Dickian, I felt like, as in Philip K. Which I don't think I'm even close to the first person to ever make that connection before. Especially since like Phil Dick died right when Gibson took off. It's like they passed the torch. Mostly what this book did for me was really kind of kick everything into motion for my book. Everything now is kind of clicking into place, and I'm feeling very motivated to work on it, which is unusual. Also might be because I'm just like doing better in my life, mostly. There's, obviously still stuff, but whatever, not important. So, like I said, I don't feel like I have that much to say about the book itself. I liked it. I didn't love it. It was like a solid 4 out of 5 book. And I think that if you like mysteries, techno thrillers, whatever, I think you'll probably dig this a lot. It's probably better written prose-wise than most things like that are. Not to be like a fucking hater, but like, I don't know. The mystery section at the bookstore, the quality often is not that high. And like, I haven't read a ton of them, but I've read a good handful. Some of the bigger, more recent ones, I read the 2 Gillian Flynns that aren't Gone Girl, and they were whatever, like the thing with all of them, I always feel like, is that like even when the story's kind of fun and satisfying, even when it's a page turner, like the prose quality is never great. And so that was a really nice thing about this book, was that the prose quality was really good, and I felt like the characters were good and well developed. With maybe the exception of one, there's a guy, Boone Chu, whose case is sort of like partner trying to solve the mystery. Halfway through the book, he kind of just like leaves and never comes back really. And I felt like, oh, why is he even in the book? It's kind of half baked. At the very end, there's like a couple things that happen that sort of make it make sense why he's even in the book, and B, why he has the sort of presence and trajectory in the plot that he does, to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm not like mad about it anymore, because I was approaching the end. I was like, why the fuck is Boone Chu even in this fucking book? But he saved it a little bit, but not all the way, in my opinion. There was a lot of like, it felt like very methodically structured, in the sense that like anytime functionally a character got introduced, I was like, there's no real red herrings ever, or like every character is a Chekhov's gun. Like oh, there she goes. Literally every single one. Like if a character gets introduced, I'm like, they're important for a reason. They are going to come back at a later time, and without fail, it always happened. Like she meets these random vintage electronics collectors in the street in London, and I'm like, well, that's going to be important later. Of course it is. She gets attacked, or like she has this interaction with this rival consultant that's very heated, and she seems like particularly vengeful towards her, and I'm like, oh well, she's clearly gonna play some sort of important role later in the story. I wonder if there's more to her than meets the eye. But it's pretty small potatoes, all of my complaints are pretty small potatoes about the book in general. Generally, I think it was pretty good. I liked it quite a bit. Looking at the plot synopses of the other two books in the series, not super jazzed, not super motivated to read them based on those synopses. But I did acquire Spook Country, which is the second book in the trilogy. I'll give it a shot, see if I can get into it. But mostly, this book was just very inspiring for me for my own book, which is fun, and I'm talking about it, which is kind of fun and kind of exciting. Thanks for watching. This book was, a lot of this video was me talking about myself and my own writing, and I am sorry. Just over the 30-minute mark on the raw footage, though, which is pretty good for me. Thank you as always for watching. If you're here for music stuff, again, I'm sorry. Maybe there will be some in the future. I haven't been feeling very motivated to play covers or anything recently at all, and I don't expect that to change. I will, however, be going to some concerts soon, so if you're here because you followed me from concert footage and you like my taste in music, well, let me tell you, I'm going to the Foxing and Hotelier concert on Tuesday, and if I can scrape the money together, Baroness and Chat Pile the week after that. We'll see. So yeah, thanks again for sticking around and watching, even though I am terrible at doing YouTube and I'm inconsistent and I never upload stuff and I don't focus on one thing, which makes me like literally impossible for the algorithm to pick me up, I think, ever. But that's fine, because I just do this because I have fun, and I made at least one human friend from doing this. Juan, if you're watching, what's up, dude? Hope you're doing well. Yeah. I'm just gonna leave you with some more footage of the murder wall, and Toshiro Mifune. Look at that fucking murder wall, dude. And it's not even the only one. There's literally, like, over in my office area, back in the dark corner, multiple other things. This was like some family that lived here. They just like put their handprints and names in the concrete when they made it. This house was built in 1892. Good night.